As I start this episode, I want to create a space where if you're listening to this, which clearly you are, I want it to be as if you and I are speaking to each other. I'm talking to just one person right now, you. And I'm going to share an experience, a bunch of experiences that I hope that as you hear this from me, that you feel a connection to what I'm saying, that you feel seen and heard in your own way with what you're dealing with, as well as that it's just something that resonates. See, I reached out to some of my friends recently, and I didn't need anything. Nothing was wrong. I was just wanting to connect. And I was wanting to do it here locally, like with people I could actually get together with. Grab food, talk, whatever. Just maybe have a cigar, something. And what I got back was, just to be blunt, it was a whole lot of nothing. Oh yeah, sure, let's do it. We gotta. From a couple of them, then, one of the guys is just always busy, super, super successful. Most of them just have stuff going on. It's really, really difficult to nail down a time. And again, I need to make sure I'm clear about this. I get it. I really do. Because I've done the same thing. I've been that guy who was just locked in, so heads down, protective of my time. Even the people that are super important to me got less of me during that time. And so I understand the idea of like an old friend reaching out and it just being something that wasn't really that important, and it gets put on the back burner, and next thing you know, nothing happens. But here's what I couldn't shake after that. Personally, I'm in a place where I'm rebuilding my life. I'm living alone. I'm in a new place. And I went and I reached out to these men who I actually have history with. And metaphorically speaking, the cupboard was dry. There was nothing there. And it's not because they aren't good men or that we don't have a connection. We do, and they are. But just something happened along the way on both sides. Basically, we let it go. We got busy. We got focused. And then we got strategic about our time. We woke up one day and realized we don't have each other in our life anymore in a real way. That's what this episode is about. Because I think it's a bigger problem than we're admitting. And I think that the way we talk about this right now, especially with it being June, during Mental Health Month for men, that we're not getting to the root of the actual problem when we talk about the need that men have to reach out and to feel heard and seen and supported. And so I want to talk about that with you. By the way, welcome to the lab. I'm your host, Bryce Prescott. Let's get into it. The truth is nobody actually decides to isolate themselves. That's the thing that I want to start with, because when I describe what I'm about to describe, it can sound like a character flaw or a choice that somebody made, and it's not. It's just a slow drift. And every single step of it makes complete sense while it's happening. It's justifiable. It starts with getting serious. You decide you're done coasting. You're an entrepreneur, and so you're done letting other people set your agenda for your life, for your business. You're done being available to everybody, especially when they're committed to nothing. You don't have common goals. So what do? You get focused. You get intentional. You start building something that matters to you and that's real. And that part, that's the good part. That's the necessary part. I'm not walking that back. Like, that's a requirement for every entrepreneur, is that when you get serious about what you're wanting to build and you put head down and you start really cutting the fat, eliminating the distractions. And like I said, I don't want to walk that back. What happens then further is you start protecting your time. You put boundaries in place. You get a system going. You stop saying yes to everything and you just start being more honest about what you actually show up for. Again, this is all good stuff. That's when the audit happens. And this is where it starts to go quietly amiss. Because you start looking at your relationships the same way you look at your business. What is the ROI in this relationship here? Who's pushing me forward? Who's keeping me stuck? Who's aligned with where I'm going? Who's just comfortable from the old version of my life? And you start making adjustments, cuts, tightening the circle, being more selective. And there's something right about that, like just. There's no way around it. Not every relationship deserves a front row seat in your life. Some people need to be at a distance. I've lived that. I know that's true. But here's what the audit never asks. What about your friendships that don't have a function? What about the guy who isn't going to help you grow your business or upgrade your mindset or connect you to anybody, but he's just your friend? What about the connection that exists just because you two have history and you actually like each other as friends, fellow travelers on this convertible rock? What about that guy? Well, unfortunately, that usually doesn't make the cut because we've never been taught in the right way, at least, to value that type of friendship. We've been taught to value productivity. We've been taught to protect our energy. We've been taught to keep our circle small, focus tight. And friendship, real friendship, no agenda friendship, that doesn't fit neatly into any of those frameworks. And so it goes away. And there's no metaphorical funeral to it. It's just quiet, just gradual, just less and less connection, less and less knowledge of what's going on in each other's lives. Maybe you see each other on social media through stories or posts or whatever. But then when you're on the other side of that and you look up one day and you realize that nobody calls you anymore, and your first thought is that's kind of good. I'm not getting distracted. I'm locked in. But then that fades and things become more quiet and the routine is really strategic with business and you just find yourself sitting alone by yourself. And the second thought comes. And the second thought is that you're really alone. Like truly alone. Nobody is seeing you. Nobody is hearing you. You serve a purpose because of your focus in your business and what that looks like. But as far as male friendship, connection, it's not there. You are completely alone. And it's not dramatic in this way. It's just factual. I mean, there's people you could call, but there's nobody that you can call. You know what I mean? And it's not because nobody cares. It's because you've been so intentional, efficient, protected, that you've actually created a life where connection has no room to exist anymore. And the people who might have reached out have learned over time that reaching out isn't worth the effort. And you start to see that well when you start to reach out and it doesn't get reciprocated, that it wasn't worth the effort back. And so you build walls and those walls work. And now you're inside them and you're wondering why it feels so shitty. That's the prison. Nobody built it for you. You built it yourself. And it was built brick by brick with one sensible, seemingly just decision at a time. Now, there's something specific I want to name because I think it's one of the most damaging things happening in the entrepreneur culture right now, and almost nobody is calling it out. It's the reflex that fires when somebody reaches out to you. It's like the program you're dealing with. Somebody texts you, let's say, and you haven't talked to them in a while. And before you even finish reading it, your brain is starting to think, it's analyzing. What do they want? What's the ask? What are they setting up? An old friend wants to get together and, grab a coffee. What's the pitch? What do they need from me? Someone that you haven't talked to in a year pops back up. Okay, here we go. What's going on? And I'll say it again. Sometimes people do want something. I know that. Like, that's real. And some people only show up when they need a favor or an introduction or access to something that you have. That happens. I've experienced it. I'm not overlooking that reality. But when that becomes your default assumption about everyone, when every incoming connection gets run through that specific program before you even give it a chance, that's a problem. Not with them, but with you and what you've turned into. Because that reflex is really telling you that you no longer believe people just want to talk to you. That connection, for its own sake, doesn't make sense to you anymore. That there has to be an angle because that's the only way and only framework that you have left for why one person would reach out over another. And man, when you can't receive a just thinking about you text without auditing it for hidden motives, you've been in the game too long without coming up for air. Now, here's the part that gets me through. The guys most conditioned to assume everyone wants something from them, those are the same guys who are dying inside for someone to reach out with no agenda. They're the ones who, on a hard night, look at their phone and genuinely can't think of who to call. And again, it's not because nobody cares about them. It's because they've spent so long signaling that access to them is expensive and complicated that everyone has taken the hint. You've trained people to stop reaching out. And now you're lonely. And those two things feel like a contradiction, but they're not. They're the same thing. I've been in rooms with some very successful men, billionaires, 9-figure, 8-figure entrepreneurs on the regular. They've built real things, made real money, have actual real influence. They are truly successful. And when you get them away from the thing that they built in an actual conversation, what you'll find underneath of it all is a kind of loneliness that they don't have a language for. And they wouldn't even call it loneliness. They call it being private, being focused, being selective. And the way that they mask it is they only talk about their business. They can't talk about anything that interests them because they don't have anything that interests them anymore. They've gotten so focused that it's robbed them. But it is a loneliness. It's a specific kind of loneliness that comes from building an impressive life and having almost nobody to just exist with them or near them in an unscripted way. And this reflex, this judgmental reflex, keeps it in place. Every time it happens, every time you treat a human being reaching out to you like a threat to assess, you send that signal. And the signal is this: I'm not free for that. My time is expensive. And mind you, the reality is, as I've shared, people stop trying after a while. And then you're exactly where you built yourself to be. Now, being that this is the month of June, every June we have this conversation, men's mental health. The message is pretty consistent. Men kill themselves at a rate that far exceeds that of women. They have a loneliness epidemic. When you get into the dating world, it's a whole different ball of wax. There is some real gnarly, heavy shit that men are dealing with. And we're being reminded all the time, men need to open up. Men need to ask for help. Reach out. When you're struggling, don't keep it inside. Don't turn to booze or drugs. Don't just raise your hand. And I agree with that. That's not wrong. If you're struggling, you should reach out. I believe that. That part of the message, I believe, is correct. And I'm not here to argue it. But it's incomplete. And the gap between what we keep saying and what actually makes a difference, that's where men are falling through. Here's my issue with the reach out when you're struggling mantra. It assumes the infrastructure is already there. It assumes that the moment a man finally decides he's not okay and he needs to talk to somebody, that somebody is going to be warm, close, practiced, available to that man. That the relationship is already built and maintained and just waiting to be activated. But for most men in the situation I'm describing, that's not what's there. What's there is a contact list full of people that they haven't had a real conversation with in years. You can't call someone you haven't talked to in 18 months and go straight to, I'm not okay. Help me. Can we talk? Like that's not how it works. That's not a friendship at a point. That's a crisis call. And men don't make crisis calls unless things are completely off the rails. It's just how we're wired. You know this. We all know this about ourselves. So the message of reach out when you're struggling lands in a vacuum. Because the relationship that would have made that reach out possible, that hasn't been maintained. That muscle is weak and cold, and by the time you actually need it, it doesn't work. The goal can't just be better crisis response. The goal has to be don't get into crisis. And that requires something way less dramatic than a vulnerability breakthrough. It requires regular, boring, no agenda contact. It requires being in each other's lives in the ordinary world, the random check-in, the call about nothing, the hangout that has no purpose except that you actually enjoy each other's company. I said something several episodes that I've been sitting with. I said I've missed having a witness to my life. That's one of the hardest parts of this divorce separation mess. I said it about my marriage ending, about losing the person who was just there, who sees the everyday version of me, who notices when something's off without me having to announce it. And I know other men are dealing with that too, but I think what's actually missing for most men in general is that thing. Not that we need emergency responders when we're on the cliff, it's that we don't have witnesses to our lives in the same way by other men. Men aren't struggling because nobody will pick up at 2 a.m. if they finally made the call. They're struggling because nobody has been close enough, consistently enough, to notice 3 weeks before the 2 a.m. call happens and to know that something would be wrong on that call. That kind of closeness doesn't come from crisis. It comes from consistency. It comes from years of ordinary, friendly contact, the check-in, the hangout, the call that didn't need to happen, but it did anyway. You don't need someone to pull you out of the water. You need someone who's been swimming next to you long enough to notice when you're not treading water as good. And that person only exists if you've been building that actual friendship in the unremarkable moments, which is exactly what we've been auditing out of our lives every time we protect our energy. Now, here's where I have to be honest with you and with myself. As I told you at the top of this episode, I've reached out to some of my boys and got a whole lot of nothing back. And my first reaction was frustration, if I'm being real about it. It was disappointing. But then I did what I always do and what I'm asking you to do. I sat with it. I asked myself not what it means about them, but what it's showing me. I don't have clean hands here. I've been that guy, specifically and repeatedly. There are men who have reached out to me when I was deep in something with my business or my relationship, or I was in a season of my life where I was either not wanting to talk or I was protecting my energy and my time, and I just didn't show up. I saw the message, I didn't respond to it. I had the intention of responding, but I never did. I even thought about calling back. Like I said, the intention was there. I was let's definitely connect. And I meant it in the moment, and then I just didn't. Just let it evaporate. And it wasn't because I didn't care about these men. I do. But because I had bought into the idea that the most responsible thing I could do was to protect my output. I wasn't in a position to give in that moment, or so I thought. I thought my attention was a resource, and friendship without a clear purpose, that was a leaking of my energy. I'd circle back when it was in a different place, and these people were still important to me. That they knew that, but I didn't do anything about it. Because things don't actually ever slow down, and you don't actually start feeling like, oh, now's the right time. You just get slower at maintaining the thing that keeps you human. And so, like I said, now I'm here in this new place, living alone, rebuilding, and I find myself kind of in jest, laughing as I'm reaching out. And the distance that I'm finding is there isn't because of what they did or didn't do. It's because of what I did and what I didn't do. The relationships have been drifting in the same direction the whole time. A whole bunch of men who told each other, consciously or not, that friendship was lower priority than money, than building your life, than your business. And so we're all building, and we're all sitting here in our respective prisons, wondering why it feels like this. I'm not at all mad or hurt or angry at the people who didn't respond to me. I understand it. Like I said, I was it. I'm just aware now of what we've created collectively as men and what it actually costs us. not just emotionally, but in health outcomes and decision making and the quality of everything that we're building, the pressure it puts on significant others, the temptation to sedate. I get it. And I want to be on the record for something. I'm making a different choice now, deliberately. I have full awareness of what I'm choosing now and why. Because I got a small version of this just a few weeks ago. On Sunday, I talked about in that last episode that I woke up depressed and I was heavy and alone, and the things shifted, not because it was anything dramatic or that, things shifted because I went on a walk and I had an opportunity to reconnect with an old friend. And at the end of that night, my housemate here and I and his girlfriend decided to play Rummikub, of all things. There was just low stakes, no agenda, just humanity, just human contact, just being around other people, not needing anything from each other. And that created the scene that made my week start off very, very strong the next day. That was the thing. And I almost didn't have that because I'd built my life in a way where that kind of thing was just incidental. It was an accident. Not something I'd actually built in, but I got lucky that day, and lucky isn't a plan. And so let me be clear about what I'm not saying before I close this out, okay? I'm not saying let everybody in. I'm not saying answer every DM, take every call, say yes to every person who wants access to your time. That is not it. Full stop. Your time matters. Your energy matters. Your work matters. I am not taking any of that back, and I'm not taking any of that away from people that have really strong boundaries about that. But there is a version of protecting your time that crosses a line. And that line is when you've protected yourself so thoroughly that you're not actually living anymore. When the efficiency of your life has eaten away the aliveness of your life. When you've managed things so well that there's no room left in it for another human being who just isn't there for the specific purpose to which you need. That's not focus. That's a problem. The middle ground is simple. It's almost too simple to say out loud. Text somebody. Today. Not because you need something, not because there's a reason, just, hey, thinking about you, man, how's it going? And mean it. Actually want to know the answer. Take the call that has no agenda. 20 minutes with somebody who just wants to talk. No outcome, no follow-up item, just two dudes having a conversation, because that's what men used to do before we got all strategic and focused and quote-unquote successful. Say yes to the thing that doesn't make sense on paper. The coffee meetup that won't lead you anywhere. The dinner that's just that, dinner. The hangout with no purpose except that you haven't seen this person in a while and you actually like them. And then, this is the harder one, let somebody actually know how you're doing. Not the version you post or the version you bring to the mastermind, the real version, the thing that's actually going on. Regularly. The real you, with at least one person. And not when it's an emergency. Because here's what I know from coaching and from my own life and from watching men navigate hard seasons. You can't fully see yourself in isolation. You need someone else's eyes to do it. You need the guy who says, you seem off lately, before you've even admitted it to yourself. You need the friend in your life who's been paying close enough attention to notice the thing you haven't named yet. That only exists if you've built the relationship and the friendship over time. In the ordinary, boring part of life. In the no stakes moment that doesn't feel important, but it's actually the whole thing. And it's load bearing. I want to say that clearly because I know how men think. We invest in what holds weight. We build what we believe matters. This matters. Male friendship is load bearing. It holds things up that you won't notice it's holding until it's gone. And then you wonder why everything feels unstable when objectively everything looks fine. This is why. Exactly this. Like I said, it's June. It's Men's Mental Health Month. And instead of just saying, reach out when you're struggling, which again is true, and you should, I want to say something more specific. And understand this. I want to invite you to build it before you need it. Be the friend who texts first. Not because something's wrong, not because you need a favor, but because you thought of somebody and it took 5 seconds to let them know. Take the calls when they call you. Not every call and not from every person, but from the people in your life who matter, even when the timing isn't perfect. Even when you're in the middle of something. Some of those interruptions are the point. You have no idea what you could be doing to help yourself and to help others by doing this. Say yes to the thing that has no visible ROI. Go for the walk. Grab a bite with your buddy. Play the game. Sit in the parking lot an extra hour because the conversation is actually that fun. Let somebody see you. Not just the version that's doing well and making moves and has it all together, the real you. The one that's figuring out things in real time just like everybody else. The one that is uncertain. The one that's insecure. Because here's what I keep coming back to. The prison that I've built, talking about today, the one that I built from self-protection and trying to optimize and strategize things the best, always assuming somebody wants something from me. It doesn't just cost friendship. It costs the version of yourself that only shows up when somebody actually knows you. Think about that guy, the version of you that only you know. If you haven't let anybody else meet that version of you, they don't know them either. And that's actually the most real version of you. That's why I've been harping on the idea of tell the truth to yourself about yourself. Be open, be inviting to connecting over truth. And as again, a reminder, you can't fully be yourself in isolation. I've tried. It doesn't work. You need somebody who's there as a witness, who's been paying attention. And you need to be that for somebody else. So if you're the man who's built the walls, I'm not judging you. I build them too. And I'm in the process of something different now, and it hurts. It's imperfect, but it's deliberate. Just encourage you to send one text. No agenda. Thinking about you, brother. It's where it starts. Not the 2 a.m. call where they're depressed or where you're really hurting and need something, or you might consider things you never would have before. Do it now. Not as a crisis, but just as a measure of appreciation. That's the thing. That's the whole thing. As men in June, in Mental Health Month, that's our focus. Again, it's not about the need to reach out in these crisis moments. It's about building something that makes the crisis moments never come. And we can do that today. You've been listening to The Lab. I'm Bryce Prescott, your host. Like I always say, till next time, take it a day at a time. I'll see you.